What was it? And one thing was really true and common. They were all high school dropouts.
Mm.
They were all dropouts. And so, you know, and I knew that when I became judge, I'm going to attack truancy. I think that's an important thing. We've got to keep our children in school. We got to figure out, you know, what the problems are that are leading to that. We've got to. That was just clearly evident. And so as I got working on that problem, and right from the beginning when I was judge, we were going to work on truancy. We were going to make that a top priority. The court before that, they did very good work, but they never really made that a priority. There were other things. So we decided we were going to do that. So now about 40% of my time goes to working with truancy type issues. And so what we know, and from studies, and we've had great studies done, you know, trying to figure out why we have violence in our community right now. And you know, if you've been reading the paper, you've been watching the news, everybody's coming in all, again, asking me, Judge, why are we having these violent problems? Well, we did a study some time ago. I knew the answer before just by working it every day, but we did a scientific study with the Office of OJJDP, and the University of South Alabama went into that, and we took a random sample of our children. Just a random sample of our children and try to figure out, you know, what leads a child to violence? What leads to violence in the community? And so they found one factor after looking at all of these 200, I think they had 248 files of children, just random of our children. What leads to violence? They found one thing, one high predictor, age of first offense. Now that's meant that a child, if he comes into your system before the age of 14, he is highly more likely. It doesn't matter if he comes in on a shoplifting or domestic violence or some kind of harassment charge. He is highly predictive of going to commit a violent crime in the future, perhaps take a life. So what leads or what factors lead to a child getting into the system at an early age? There are two things, and it really kind of solidified and it made me feel better because I think we're on the right track. Well, one thing is family dysfunction, and the other is school failure. If we were going to make a dent in our problems, we have got to deal with family dysfunction and school failure. Because that leads certainly to the age of first offense, but that leads to all the problems. We all know that. Y'all all know that, right? I'm a judge. I'm dealing with truancy issues today, and what was I dealing with? I was dealing with parents that are deeply addicted to drugs. I was dealing with parents themselves, not the children now. We're talking about truancy, but we're talking about the parents now. This is a parent issue, many, many times. So we got parents addicted to drugs, parents with undiagnosed, many times, mental illnesses that are just festering and getting worse. In that environment that creates for the child, you know what that's like. And so they're certainly going to be more prone to failure. And we just work on that so hard, and it's amazing the results that we're able to see when we can get in there and get in there early. But it's very difficult, and it's hard. And it takes a community of services, really, that we really got to call together. Well, you know, I was in court today, and just to give you an example, I have a mother, and she has 4 kids, and she's been raped 3 times in her life when she was a young child, right? And 3 times, and you know, she moved from place to place. She's had children by several different people. 2 of them were the product of rape. These children, you know, mom has not gotten her mental health needs taken care of. She's turned to drugs and she's self-medicating, and now she's raising these children, and they were repeating this cycle. Can you imagine that? And of course you do, because you see that every day. That's the situation that we're dealing with. So when I go to truancy court, I'm worn out. Right now, I promise you, I'm worn out, because every court day, every time we do this, from the time we start at 9 o'clock in the morning till the time we end, sometime late into the evening, we're dealing with death and destruction and brokenness, right? We really are. I'll tell you, I tell everybody we're fighting a war in this community. We are fighting a war. We have about 1,000 children right now on probation to us, right? And I'm gonna tell you one thing that never changes about that. 92% of those children come from a single parent home. What does that say? What do you think that means to the caregiver that's left there to do it by themselves? Many times mothers, right? What does that mean? Well, that means she's almost assuredly either going to have the stresses, and you think about what life must be like for a mother with 5 or 6 children, and she's trying to work and keep down a job, but her children, you know, she has to make a decision, sometime a very real decision, of whether she watches the children or she goes to work. She's got to keep the roof over these children's head, doesn't she? She's got to, right? So she's got to make real decisions. Do I go to work or do I watch my children? She knows that if she goes to work and doesn't watch her children, well, when you've got one income coming in many times and you're living in poverty, like probably 80+% of the children that I deal with live in poverty, 85%. In Mobile County alone, 40% of all of our children live in poverty. 40%, and many of them in extreme poverty, right? But here's this mother, and she lives in poverty, so she lives in a bad neighborhood. She's trying her best to keep the roof over, and she's working hard as she can, but when she turns her back, the kids are getting in trouble. And then she comes back, and now she's got to go to court in addition to working, and she's got to start looking at how am I going to pay court costs and expenses that are going to be associated with that, and how do I get a ride because I don't have anything but a bus ticket right now, right? Think about the stresses that are going on with these families. And that's what I deal with every single day, the reality of having to see parents that are living in that reality, living in poverty, trying their best. Many times they are. Or many times they're just so overwhelmed that they just can't even do anything. They're the mothers that, not the ones that are working, but those that have just totally given up. Either given up to drugs, given up, to irresponsible behavior, or just given up because they can't put one foot in front of the other. They're so beat down and they don't see any hope in their lives, right? And that's the way our children go. I mean, you think about what it would be like for a child to grow up like that with a mom that's just, Sherry doesn't like this, but stressed out. And when you talk about real stress, you're working like that all day long. You're working. She doesn't like the word stress, but I'm using it anyway. Okay? And that's the only word I know to use. I know when I come home after a really hard day, and I got to really be careful about how I talk to my wife and my children sometimes. And I love them, and I'm really a peaceful person. I'm not an ugly person. I know when my wife comes home and she's not happy, something's going on, you think about how it feels in your home. I just don't want that in my home. And many of you don't. You were able to stop it. But you think about somebody that's doing it. Everything is on her. Everything is on this mother. No father's involved, nobody, and everything is on her. And now she's having to do so many things, and she can't keep it all together. Think about what that life must feel like in a home like that. And I see that all the time. I see, I'm having to tell them, man, you're going to have to calm down. We're going to really do our best to help you, but we've got to create peace in your home, because if we don't create peace in your home, it's very traumatic for you and it's traumatic for your children, and we're not going to get anywhere. That is our biggest struggle, I think. So, I'm here, I guess, Sherry, to talk about mental health and what I'd like to see. I'll tell you real quick. So we got about, we probably have 10,000 cases in Mobile County right now that we deal with every day. And let me tell you, that's not like cases in the downtown court, where you're just dealing with individuals. We're dealing with the family. We're dealing with a litany of issues that the adult system never has to deal with. So when I say 10,000, that's a lot of work, right? That's probably like 6,000 criminal cases a year that we have to deal with that need a lot of attention. That's several thousand truancy cases that we possibly can do, dealing not only with children but with families. That's PFAs, protection from abuse, where some kind of violence is going on in the home. Probably 1,000 of those every year. Can you imagine? That's dependency cases where children are being abused and neglected. Do you know right now we have 500 children in the care of DHR in Mobile County? Does that sound like a lot of children in care?